for pages and possibilities. Glad you are joining us today, or joining me today. And I look forward to what I am going to share with you today, which is going to be the several of the books that I've read over the past 2 months. So this will be mostly July and August. So I want to share what my thoughts are about them and give them a rating. I'm actually working on a rating system so that it's a little bit more scientific, although not completely objective. So still very subjective to me, to my interests. But I will have kind of a breakdown. Probably next video I will talk about how I'm going to rate going forward. But today we are going to get into 6 books that I have read over the past 2 months. 2 of them are hardback, or not hardback, but in print books, and then the other 4 are actually pre-release. So these have not been published yet. They are still going through the process, and this is what I've read is the advanced reader copy. So I'm gonna tell you about some upcoming releases. As I talk about them, I'll tell you when they're expected to publish as well. So if any of them intrigue you, you know when to keep an eye out for them. So without further ado, let's get into some books. I will start with the paperbacks. The first one is A Court of Mist and Fury. This is the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. And in this book, we follow Feyre as she goes through the aftermath of what she did in book 1. She's very traumatized by it, and it's really I think the heart of this second book is figuring out how to overcome that trauma and deal with it. So it is also an enemies to lovers story. So I don't want to spoil it, but if you haven't read it yet, there is an enemy in book 1 that becomes the romantic interest in book 2. And having read this, I absolutely agree with most of the people that I've heard from that this is much better than book 1. Much more, you see a lot more of the world building, you see a lot more character growth among multiple characters, both Feyre and her love interest, as well as some of the supporting characters. In the end, I was, at the very end, I was shocked at how it ended. I did not see it coming, and I am very anxious to read the next book so I can see how it progresses. The ending is very kind of heart-wrenching, but at the same time I felt comforted. So I know that's all very vague, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But definitely highly recommend reading this series so far, at least through book 2. So first one being A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this one A Court of Mist and Fury, both by Sarah J. Maas. I believe I did give this one a 5 out of 5. So that is number 1. Second one in paperback is Legends and Lattes, and this one is by Travis Baldry. This one has been branded as a cozy fantasy, and I absolutely agree. This follows the story of an orc who is an adventurer and decides that she is ready to hang up her sword and live a more relaxing life. So she does that over the last few months of her travels as an adventurer. she develops a plan and encounters in I want to say it's a gnomish town, encounters the never before known to her coffee. So she is introduced to the delights of coffee. She is so impressed with it, so in love with the coffee, that it helps her decide on what she wants to do when she gets out of being an adventurer, and that is open up her own coffee shop. The name of the coffee shop is Legends and Lattes. We see her go through the whole process of creating this coffee shop, basically from the ground up. She picks a location in terms of city, then she picks a site where she's going to build it, and it's a previously like I think it's saddlery. Takes it all down to the studs, rebuilds it, and in the process she does get a merry band of characters that become her new adventure group. And the first one we encounter is one who helps her build, actually has the carpenter knowledge to help her build the place. And so she builds it, and then she has the grand opening, and she gets a partner who is really good at the marketing side of things. Through that, they get a good, steady following of customers. And then another person wanders in that becomes part of the group, and he is a musician. So it adds a musical aspect to the atmosphere of the cafe. Then there's a character who comes in who is a wizard of sorts and helps actually kind of push the plot along. The plot after the store is built and is going smoothly is about one of the things that she used for luck to get her started on this business that other people are also after because of its supposed power to grant wishes. So that becomes the second part of the story, and it's just so... It says it's low stakes. I felt like it wasn't quite low stakes, but we weren't talking real life and death, so... But there is a point where the main character, Viv, is basically at her lowest, and that group that she developed that basically started being drawn to her, that group helps her through that lowest part and helps her get back to her happiness and fulfilling her passion. So, really love this book. There is a follow-up called Books and Bone Dust. I will be putting that on my to-read list, hopefully sometime in the near future. So I gave this a rating, probably 4 out of 5. Just because of the low stakes part. It wasn't like completely earth-shattering in terms of its influence, but is absolutely perfect for like going into the fall and winter months. You want to cozy up in front of a fireplace with a nice cup of hot cocoa and just really dive into this world and enjoy the story. So, all right, so now the rest of the books are all digital because they are advanced reader copies, and I'm going to talk about them, I guess, in the order of publishing. So the first one that is coming out is called A Song to Drown Rivers. So A Song to Drown Rivers is by Anne Liang, set to be published on October 1st. This is a what I consider a court intrigue story, and it takes place, I want to say either China or Japan, but very like ancient times, maybe medieval. It follows the story of Zishi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's Xishi. and who is known as the most beautiful woman in the land. And because of her beauty, she's recruited as a spy for her country, her king, by an advisor to become the consort for the king in the opposing kingdom. With being the consort, she is trained to romance the king and become the center of his attention so that she can influence him to do things that open up this opposing kingdom to the planned attack from her homeland. There's very much an element of revenge in this story. Both Zishi herself, as well as many in her home kingdom, are very much about revenge for things that have happened to them. There's also a lot of court intrigue. So when Zishi is in the opposing court kingdom, she has to navigate the other advisors, some who kind of think she might not be completely devoted to her king. It's what I really loved about this is the settings. Absolutely gorgeous descriptions of the hometown, the palace that she's in, the outfits that she wears, the nature that surrounds. It's absolutely beautiful, poetic description. So that, I think, was what stood out the most to me, is just the poetry of the landscape. In the end, it is a very bittersweet story. Not exactly a happy ending, but I feel like it's very true to what I know of Japanese and Chinese culture, in that it's not the happily ever after that you tend to see in like European fairy tales, but it definitely comes to a conclusion. So that one, I did rate it a 5 stars, 5 out of 5. Absolutely, I think that's one that's going to stick with me for quite a while, and I'm going to keep an eye out for other things that Anne Liang writes and see if I enjoy other works of hers. Next one, we have House of Frank. This one I discovered from another YouTuber. He goes by Easy Cat on YouTube. I will put a link to his channel in the description. He's basically supporting the publishing of this book. It's an indie author. All right, so House of Frank by Kay Sinclair is a story about Saika, who is on a journey to find herself after the loss of her sister, and also find, I guess, closure with the death of her sister. She was made responsible by her sister to bury her, although she's currently cremated, so it's not like she's got the body going around with her. But her sister asked Saika to bury her in this specific place called the House of Frank. So she journeys there. When she gets there, she figures it's just going to be like there for a day, get it done, and then go on her way, go do some more adventures to honor her sister. But when she gets there, she ends up becoming part of this House of Frank, part of this household, which is a group of other people from all walks of life who have come here and lived there as caretakers of the house, as well as the arboretum, which is where people are buried. And what happens is, in the arboretum, it's a magical area where when people are buried, they are put in this ground that is magical, and the ashes grow into a tree. So this arboretum is just full of trees of people who have passed, each tree being unique. It's just a very interesting way to think about the end of a person's life. So Saika has a very hard time getting herself to do this. So she does stick around, but they develop friendships, and develop connections with each other, and we find out Frank, who is the owner of the House of Frank, of course, Frank and Saika have actually done similar things in their past, and because of that, Saika is able to help Frank, and in the process, Frank, as well as the rest of the inhabitants of the house, is able to help Saika. Both of them get through their grief of their loss. So the house itself is magical, and it is very much connected to Frank himself. So if something is going wrong with Frank, you start seeing things going wrong with the house, and that becomes a big part of the story as well. But in the end, like, the elements that really stick out are like found family. So this becomes Saika's found family. Everybody else in the household has essentially considered the people in the house to be their found family. And then also it deals a lot with grief. So I absolutely love the story. I did give it a 4 out of 5. And I'm looking forward to see what else Kay Sinclair does. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these stories, whether they intrigue you enough to get them when they come out, when they're published. And in the case of the 2 that are already out, if you've read them or plan to read them, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, do you have the same opinion of these books that I do? I love to really have a discussion. Like, in the comments, please tell me what you think about any of these stories, whether you think you might like it or not like it. And I would just love to have a conversation about any of these stories, because I feel like doing so really gives me, and hopefully you, a chance to fully experience everything that the book has to offer. If you made it this far, I'd love if you would like and share if you know of any other book lovers who might be interested in hearing about these books. And with that, I hope to see you next week back here at Paper, Pages, and Possibilities. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful week.